Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining for this PMF workshop. And this workshop has been organized by the SAIS Black Student Union. So I want to thank our leaders from the BSU, Theo and Bem, for their initiative in putting this workshop together. So we will get started by doing a quick overview of the PMF program. And then we will turn it over to our panelists. And we have two panelists joining us today. We have Aquania Escarne, who is a Foreign Service Officer at the Department of State, and she is also a SAIS alum. And we also have Melanie Weish, who is a Pathways Program Officer with USAID. And so they will be also sharing their insight into the PMF program with our students. So I see we have a few more people getting logged in, so we'll just let them get logged in, and we'll get our slides up on the screen here, and then we'll get started just with a really quick overview. Okay, great. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. I'm just going to run through some slides quickly. I know we want to get through all of our slides and get to speak with our panelists as well. If you have questions, we will have time for Q&A at the end of the session today. And you can also feel free to type in your questions into the chat as well if you would like to do that, or to the Q&A box. All right, I'm just going to get started with a quick overview of the PMF program. So PMF stands for Presidential Management Fellows Program. And as many of you know, the application is currently open. The class of 2021 application dates are September 30th through October 14th. And the application closes at noon on the 14th. So please be sure to allow yourself enough time to apply if you are planning to apply this cycle. Next slide, please. All right, so what is the PMF? So the Presidential Management Fellowship is the federal government's premier leadership development program for advanced degree holders across all academic disciplines. And the program mission is to recruit and develop tomorrow's federal government leaders. Next slide. So to give you an overview of the program, so as I mentioned previously, it is a pipeline for future leaders in the federal government. And we are at a point now where we are seeing a lot of retirement going on in the government. So there are opportunities to join the government and go through this program, and to eventually achieve a leadership level position through going through this program. It involves a competitive and rigorous online application and assessment process. And it solicits eligible individuals annually. So the applicants, you will apply once a year. And then the applicants will be selected as finalists in the program. And finalists then seek appointments as fellows. So if you apply this cycle, you apply this fall, you will find out if you are a finalist, usually within about 6 weeks, and then you will have 1 year of eligibility during which you will apply for a fellow for a position, and you'll be converted to a fellow once you accept a position. And it is a 2-year fellowship of training and development, and there is potential to be converted into a permanent position at the end of that time period. So initial appointments are typically at the GS-9, the GS-11, or the GS-12 or equivalent, and there is promotional potential to the GS-13. And this is really, a lot of the agencies are doing succession planning, as I mentioned previously. So as people retire and leave the government, they are looking to fill those positions with high potential candidates, often from the PMF program. Next slide. So the PMF program has a rich history of presidential leadership and commitment. So it was started in 1977 under President Carter as the Presidential Management Intern Program. And you may hear sometimes, if you're talking to someone who went through the program at one of the earlier stages, some of our more senior alumni may refer to the program as PMI. It's actually the same program, so they changed the name at some point. But it was started about 40 years ago. In 1982, under President Reagan, there were a maximum of 200 PMI selected yearly. And at that point in time, colleges and universities nominated people to the program. It was also open to non-public policy students at that time. And then in 1988, there were a maximum of 400 PMI selected yearly, so the program was expanded. In 2003, under President Bush, the name was changed to Presidential Management Fellows Program, and it was also, the training and development requirements were also expanded at that time to reflect sort of the higher level of potential of the program. And then in 2010, under President Obama, the program was placed within the Pathways programs, and they extended the eligibility to include recent graduates and eliminated the nomination process. So you can now apply up to 3 times. You no longer, it's no longer one try. You can apply your final year at SICE, 1 year out, and then the following year as well. Next slide. So as you can see, PMFs make a positive impact on our nation. Here are some alumni of the program. Some of them have stayed in the federal government. Some people have gone on to other careers in the private sector, academia, and the nonprofit sector. So PMFs go on to all different type of careers. Next slide. And the fellowship includes onboarding with your fellowship class, a rigorous leadership development and individual development plan, 160 hours of formal interactive training, at least 1 4 to 6 month developmental assignment, and optional rotational opportunities. So you could accept an initial assignment at one agency and then go on to do rotational opportunities at different agencies in the government. So that's a really good opportunity that it provides you. You will be assigned a senior level mentor. You have benefits such as public transportation subsidies, telework, and student loan repayment. And you also have the opportunity to non-competitively convert to a term or permanent federal position upon successful completion of the program requirements. Next slide. All right, so let's talk about the PMF application timeline. So before you apply, you should go on to the Become a PMF website at pmf.gov and review the application process, the tips, and the assessment process, and also read the assessment preparation guide just to prepare yourself before you actually go through the process. Confirm your eligibility. So you want to confirm your degree date, your citizenship, if you're qualified for any preferences in the process. And so you can review all of that under the Confirm Eligibility section of the website. You want to assemble your documents. So that would include your advanced degree transcript along with supporting documentation for any preferences or reasonable accommodations that you may be eligible for. Create an applicant user account. So you will need to create an applicant user account after the application opens, and it is currently open. And so again, review the application process webpage at pmf.gov. Start your application. And so when it launches, it's advertised currently on usajobs.gov. And so go there and then read the announcement and the Become a PMF webpage thoroughly. Complete the online assessment. So the online assessment covers competencies that are critical to success on the job across all PMF occupations. So again, those are covered in the assessment preparation guide. Certify and submit your application. So you may only submit and certify one application, and you will be asked to certify that you completed the application, including the online assessment, independently and without assistance. And you can monitor your application status through your applicant user account. Next is the adjudication phase. So shortly after the application closes, all applicants will be adjudicated on eligibility, complete application, assessment scores, and other factors leading to the selection of finalists. And the time frame from the application closing until the announcement of finalists can take 4 to 6 weeks. And then the finalists will be announced. So when they're selected, you will be informed of your status, and a list of finalists will also be posted at the PMF website. So after you become a finalist, that will be 4 to 6 weeks from the application closing, so toward the end of this calendar year. Then you will have 12 months to secure an appointment. So you have 1 year of eligibility. So you will then apply for the PMF appointments once you become a finalist. Next slide. Okay, so the application again takes place annually. So you apply now. And you can apply again if you were not to be selected this time. You could apply again, and then a third and final time. So you have 3 chances to apply. And it is posted on USA Jobs, and you apply on the PMF Talent Management System, so TMS. So you see the announcement on USA Jobs, but then you apply under the TMS system. You submit an online application, including your resume, your advanced degree transcript, your supporting documentation for any preferences or reasonable accommodations, and your online assessment. And then the finalists will be announced 6 weeks after application, so November timeframe. And then you'll have 12 months of appointment eligibility. And upon securing a position with a participating federal agency, you will then become a fellow. Next slide. Okay, so the 2021 online assessment is designed to identify evidence of the following competencies that are critical to success on the job across all PMF occupations. So these competencies include flexibility, integrity, interpersonal skills, public service motivation, problem solving, and written communication. The online assessment consists of 4 batteries covering the following: situational judgment, problem solving, life experience, and writing. So we encourage you to review the assessment preparation guide that is posted on the PMF website, and before you complete this section, before you complete this assessment, so that you'll know what to expect. It will go over this more in depth and will give you some sample questions. Next slide. Okay, so who can apply and how to apply? So graduate students worldwide can apply for the PMF. You must have an advanced degree from an accredited institution, and you must have completed your degree requirements by August 31st following the application year. So if you're applying this fall, you need to have completed your graduation requirements by August 31st of 2021. You may apply within the last year of study or up to 2 years after completing your advanced degree. And you must either have US citizenship or have the ability to legally be able to work in the United States. So how to apply? Review the Become a PMF section of the PMF website for the next annual application, and the application is currently open, and follow the instructions and the link found in the announcement that is posted currently on usajobs.gov. Next slide. Okay, so top 3 common mistakes we just want to mention. Transcript issues. So many applicants submit transcripts that are missing required elements such as your name, your school name, degree program and type, and most importantly, the date the degree was conferred or is expected to be completed. So definitely check to make sure your transcript has everything it needs. So there is a section on the PMF website where you can check that, because you would not want to have your application discounted because of an issue with your transcript or some other minor issue such as that. Another common mistake is insufficient documentation. So if you are missing documents associated to a transcript when a required element is missing, so your degree date completion, for example, you may need to have a document from the registration office that states that. I do believe that SICE transcripts do have that information, but just double check. And if for some reason it doesn't, check with the registration office before you submit. If you are applying with any preferences or with reasonable accommodations, you would also need to have documentation for those. So again, review the section of the PMF website just to make sure that you have all of your documentation that you will need before you apply. The third one is waiting until the last minute. So many applicants do not start the application process until the night before or even hours before it closes. So we encourage you to get an early start. The entire application process can take 3 to 4 hours to complete. So don't wait till the last minute, and make sure you prepare for the assessment before you sit down to take it with the assessment prep guide, which is found on the PMF website. Next slide. All right, so just a quick snapshot of PMF. So over the past 4 years, 2017 to 2020, there have been an annual average of 5,339 applicants, 339 finalists, 61 academic disciplines, 135 academic institutions, and 13% were veterans. So just to talk a little bit about SAIS's experience with the program, we have a very strong track record with the PMF program. We have had, over the past 5 years, we've had between 16 and 30 PMF finalists. So we're always in the top 3 schools for number of PMF finalists, and we're often the #1 school with this program. So we have a very good track record with it. Last year we had 30 finalists, so that was, I think, the highest number that we've had over the past 5 years. And of our 30 or so finalists that we had last year, or we've had anywhere from 16 to 30. Maybe 2 or 3 are veterans. I get this question a lot. Do I need to be a veteran to apply? And you definitely don't. I mean, there is veterans preference associated with the program, but we have maybe 2 or 3 veterans in each class of our finalists. So if you're not a veteran, definitely still apply. PMFs work at over 100 federal agencies, 42 agencies, and 122 sub-agencies. The only place where you would not be able to work as a PMF would be in the intelligence agencies, intelligence community employers. But other federal agencies and sub-agencies, you would be able to work as a PMF. And even if your agency you're interested in had not hired a PMF previously, they may be able to hire one if you were to request or to know somebody there. So, so that is a possibility for you. And 27 states, so you do not just have to be in Washington, D.C. There are PMF opportunities in other states. I know for our San Francisco Energy Trek, we actually see some PMFs out at the U.S. Forest Service out there in the Bay Area. So there are opportunities across the United States to work as a PMF. Next slide. Okay, so to learn more, the PMF website is listed there at pmf.gov. You can also subscribe to the PMF listserv to get notifications. Review the Become a PMF section of the website, review the applicant resources, including the assessment prep guide, and they have a new handbook this year, which I think is like the assessment prep guide and some other additional resources for your review. So review all of that. And you can also send your inquiries to the PMF application at opm.gov email address. And they're actually pretty quick about replying to emails. I've emailed them myself as well, and they're pretty fast. So if you have questions, feel free to send them there. One last point I want to make is that if you become a finalist, you are not obligated to complete the program. So, I think it's something like maybe 60% of finalists actually do become a fellow. So you are not obligated at all. So if you're not sure, but you think you might want to do the program, you might as well apply, because it just gives you more options, and then you can decide not to apply for PMF appointments, or you can, look at some and decide, there's not anything you're interested in, or you found another job someplace else, and that is totally fine. So I encourage everyone to apply, because it's a really great opportunity, and you are not obligated to do the program just by becoming a finalist. So I know we have a lot of other panelists to get to today, so we'll save questions for the end. But I do want to quickly introduce our next speaker. We have Aquania Escarne, who is a SAIS alum, and she is currently a Foreign Service Officer at the U.S. Department of State. So with that, I will turn it over to Aquania.
Hi guys, so I can't undo my video. I don't have the permission, but can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you great.
Okay, great. So, yay. Hi, I'm so excited to be here today to talk about my journey in the Foreign Service just a little bit, and give you some encouraging tips or tricks for the State Department. I am a SAIS alum. I graduated 2007 and did Bologna as well. So if there are any Bologna SAISers out there, hi, welcome. So glad to see all of you, or not, but participate today. One of the things I'm very grateful for is SAIS gave me a lot of opportunities to network and to get to know other classmates who were on my same career track or similar. And surprisingly, when I joined the State Department in January of 2008, I found that a lot of SAIS students and alumni were here as interns, as fellows, as very successful civil service employees and foreign service officers as well. I had a couple of people in my graduating class who made the cut and got called up. So I got to even start my career with fellow SICers. So I just want to encourage you to know that there is a huge network at the department, and we're constantly trying to assist one another, whether it's through talking and information or just helping you find opportunities that you may not be looking for, but they are out there. USA Jobs is great, but it's not always the best user-friendly profile or program to use. And so sometimes it helps to have a fellow SICer who can tell you about opportunities so you can be very direct in your searches. As a Foreign Service officer, I've been in for about 12, almost 13 years now, and I started my career in Haiti as a consular officer, and I've also spent some time in Ecuador, Dubai, United Arab Emirates, and a lot of time in Washington, D.C., working on policy, doing public outreach recruitment, and now I'm actually working on Asia, where I'm supporting about 6 embassies and consulates abroad, and I've helped with everything from repatriation flights because of COVID-19 to how can we help build a new building, facilitate more support, and presidential visits to the region. So there's a lot of opportunity here, and you can work on energy, you can work on science issues, you can work on really whatever your personal passions are. In my career, I am a foreign service generalist, but I've been able to pivot so many different times to learn about new issues that interest me and to work on issues that I really am passionate about. I've worked on human rights and social issues, international religious freedom, and then also on Colombia, right at the time where Venezuela was definitely going in the wrong direction and needed our support. And a lot of attention from the White House was in that area. At the department, when I was a recruiter for 2 years, one of the things we were proud to say was that we were one of the largest, one of the agencies to hire the largest amount of Presidential Management Fellows, and constantly giving opportunity and real work to fellows who were given opportunity. So I want to encourage you to not only apply to the program, but please consider the State Department when you're deciding where you want to land. We definitely give you real work. When I mentioned to my deputy director that I'd be speaking with you guys today, he said himself that he was actually on the fence between PMF or Foreign Service, and Foreign Service just called back first. But he did note that in his career, which he's been in longer than I, he has always fairly treated PMFs with they're giving them the credit due to thanks to their education and their experience, and has definitely given them the work of a new Foreign Service officer or a senior civil service employee. So you definitely will be amongst a team treated as an equal and given ultimate responsibility over the portfolio that you're assigned. But there's also an opportunity to provide your knowledge and information. Some of you may have worked before your time at SICE, and you have some industry-specific information that might be helpful to the team. And believe it or not, yes, I work for the government, but we are innovative in a couple of spaces, and we're also open to more ideas and giving those on the team a platform in which they can implement them. And you'll find that right now, we are stretching our creativity even more because we're working, teleworking, working from home, also trying to still support thousands of missions abroad and thousands of American citizens as well. So I want you to definitely think about bringing your creativity into our realm and how you can contribute. I did also promise to give some tips, so I'll dive into those. As a recruiter, I spend a lot of time recruiting individuals for the State Department's Foreign Service and Civil Service, so I'm well aware of several programs that you can use to get into the government, so this was one of them. But as a wonderful and stellar program, I also kind of gave people tips on how to help them stand out. For those who haven't figured it out yet because you've never been into USA Jobs, I strongly, strongly encourage you to take the advice that was in the last presentation. go and look at the platform now, get familiar with it, explore, do all the playing around you can, because when you actually want to apply to a job, that is not the time to learn how to use USA Jobs or to create your profile or to figure out how do you upload your resume or where do you start. I think you need to do all that experimentation now while you're still trying to figure it out. Don't wait to the last minute to submit your application. Tech issues happen, and they happen everywhere and at any time. And of course, when you least expect it. So please plan your time accordingly so your application is submitted early. Next, I'd like to remind you that work experience, even if it's voluntary, is still good experience to know on your government resume when you're submitting your application. There are a lot of skills that I learned, for example, volunteering at the Capital Area Food Bank, and I used a lot of those skills to be other attributes that I included in my resume. And it matters because for some jobs, you have to be very specific about the experience you have and how long you've had it. And if it was acquired in a voluntary position, it doesn't mean that it's not experience worth noting. It's just as valuable. Another thing I would recommend is make your timeline or the years in which you've done something as exact and specific as possible. I know we're trained to be concise and sometimes are encouraged to be brief, but on a government resume, I actually recommend you elaborate a little bit more than normal. And when it comes to how long you've done something, if you could actually state the date that you started something and the date it ended, that is actually preferred, because if the requirement for the job says 2 years of experience for something, you have to show 2 years as exactly as possible. Otherwise, you won't get credit for the time or experience required. And if you don't have significant work experience, but you want to be very competitive for these opportunities, I also encourage you to seek voluntary or paid opportunities that will help you learn or teach you the lessons or skills that you're lacking. So a lot of us, take time to reflect. COVID's a great time to think about, what are you missing? What do you not know? And what can you improve upon? If it's something you can learn in a class and be educated about, take the class so that you can then say you have the skill set and then obviously apply the knowledge. But if it's a particular skill such as managing others or managing budgets, and you don't have that particular experience, try to find opportunities or jobs where you can earn that experience so then you can add it to your resume. And keep in mind that a volunteer position could be where you get that skill set. But again, make sure that you include it in your resume. And then if you do get an opportunity to interview, one of the things I always recommend, even to foreign service officers who are about to take the oral exam, this is one of my tips that can really apply to anyone, is take a time to reflect on all of the jobs you've done, all the previous experience you've gained, and what you did in those different jobs or capacities, and come up with stories that you can naturally tell that not only highlight how you're amazing, but also may highlight the skill sets that the employer is looking for. In the foreign service, when you're taking an oral exam, that's really important because we have 13 dimensions that they're testing you for. And the more examples you can show that you have those 13 dimensions, the better your odds in your interview of getting a higher score, because you're highlighting many skills and the diversity that you bring to the table. I think the same applies to this type of opportunity, the Presidential Management Fellow, or any opportunity you're pursuing. Using your experiences, but telling them in a way that's engaging. Stories are always engaging. They tend to keep people's interest, but they can also highlight how multifaceted you are and all that you can accomplish if you were added to the team. So those are just a couple of things, off the top of my head that I wanted to share with you guys. I wish you the best of luck, and I'll definitely be here for Q&A. So whenever you have questions, if they're specifically for me, I'll be happy to take those.
Great. Thank you so much, Aquania. Now we have Melanie Weish, who is a PMF program officer with USAID, and she is going to share a slide deck with us and also speak about the program from her perspective as a PMF program officer, or Pathways program officer, I'm sorry. So with that, I will turn it over to Melanie.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. I am happy to be here today. As stated, we have a slide presentation for you. In my role at USAID, I am the Pathways Programs Officer, which means I have overarching responsibilities for the entire Pathways program, which consists of the internship program, the recent graduates program, as well as the Presidential Management Fellowship program, or PMF program, which is our focus today. My colleague, Linda Wilson, is actually the program manager for USAID for the PMF program. Unfortunately, she had an emergency and was not able to attend today, so that's why we're going through the slides with me. But Linda Wilson is a very good person to get to know. She's the one that manages the hiring process for the PMFs that we bring into our agency. Next slide, please. A couple of the slides, especially at the beginning, are things that have already been shared with you, but we want to reiterate the importance of recognizing that the dates for a person to apply, those dates are now, started on 9/30 and ends on 10/14/2020. And you have heard repeatedly the importance of applying for this fellowship now. Please do not wait to the last minute. As everyone has stated, there could be technical problems. You don't know, maybe you're not feeling good for some of those days. Many things can happen, and you don't want to be under any stress when you apply for this opportunity, because this opportunity is an excellent opportunity and can really enhance your career. So please start early. Plus time, if you look at time, the days go pretty quickly. It is already the 2nd of October, and by the time we go back to the work week, what is that going to be, the 4th and 5th of October? So time is going very quickly. So please apply now. Next slide, please. Okay, now this slide was also shared in the previous presentation, but we wanted to put it on or recognize it again because our agency, USAID, we really embrace the fact that PMFs are our future leaders. The agency is very, very keen on bringing on board talented PMFs. It's very important to our agency. Each year, we bring on board, I would say, our target number is 21, but anywhere from 21 to 30 PMFs join our agency each year. Now, please keep in mind, USAID is a smaller agency. The State Department is much bigger than USAID, but we still have an excellent agency to join. Next slide, please. Okay, before I talk about the process, I should have mentioned, we hope everyone is familiar with USAID versus our role versus the role of the State Department. USAID is the development agency for the federal government. We have Foreign Service officers who work in the missions overseas. And we have civil service employees here in Washington, D.C. Our focus or biggest trend for us is called the Journey to Self-Reliance, which is a relatively new paradigm for USAID, but we're building the capacity of the host countries to address their own development challenges in the future. We'd like for them to focus on that more so we can help or continue to help other countries. And then the other focus is almost 50% of our development assistance is on global health and the many crises throughout the world, including the current pandemic. Now, most people know us for our humanitarian assistance, as we are usually the first responders throughout the world for earthquakes, food shortages, hurricanes, etc. So I just wanted to make sure you're familiar with the agency, and I apologize for that. So the PMF program overview, as I said previously, is a two-phase process for to become a PMF. The first one is the application process, and after you go through the application process, if you are selected, then you become a finalist. Now in phase two, as a finalist, you still have to apply to the job opportunities that are there specifically for PMFs. You have to apply at either our agency or other agencies for these job opportunities. And if you select it, then you become a PMF. Okay, so I'm not going to go through the rest. It's all there in the slides. Next slide, please. Let's see, for this side, it talks about the annual application process. You know, we're right in the midst of that now. We talked previously about the fact that the announcement is on USAJobs.gov, but when you're actually applying, you're actually applying through the PMF talent management system, and USA Jobs has a link that takes you to that system. And I think the rest of the things we discussed previously. Next slide, please. Let's see, finalists are typically announced about 6 weeks after the application closes. As a finalist, you have 12 months of appointment eligibility, so you have 12 months to find a job with a federal agency, and upon securing position with a participating federal agency, you become a fellow, which is very exciting. Next slide, please. On this slide, Linda wanted to highlight for everyone who could apply. Once again, as graduate students worldwide, you have to have an advanced degree from an accredited institution. Advanced degree requirements must be completed by August 31st of the year following the application. So if people are in school and would like to apply now, they can, as long as they are graduated by or received their degree by August 31st of the year following the application. Must apply within the last year of study or up to 2 years after completing an advanced degree. And you have to be a U.S. citizen or have the ability to legally be able to work. Next slide, please. Okay, on this slide, once again, it talks about how to apply. I think we've said that a number of times, that you have to go to the USAJobs.gov and apply through USAJobs.gov. Next slide, please. So what type of positions does USA offer PMFs? Someone has asked that before. Typically, most of the bureaus within the agency will ask to hire PMF, but they are program analysts, program specialists, we have budget analysts, international corporation specialists, health science manager, financial management specialist, economist, democracy specialist. What I would recommend that you do is to do a search on USAJobs.gov, and under program analyst and all these different titles, they will list specific job descriptions or position descriptions telling you what some of these things, the responsibilities of some of these positions and the qualifications that they are seeking. A program analyst, I must mention, there is a very generic title for the agency. We have program analysts in almost every bureau or office of the agency, and they do very different things. So if you see a title and you say program, something like program analyst, or a title like program specialist, don't let the title turn you away. Please take the time to read the job announcement, look at the responsibilities that are listed, and as well as the qualifications they're seeking. It may be an opportunity that is really of interest to you, but the title is just very generic. And at USAID, we do have a lot of generic titles. So just keep that in mind. Generic, read the descriptions. Next slide, please. The grade levels, I believe we listed that before. The grade levels are typically that you come in are GS9 through GS11. And the full performance level that you can be promoted into is usually somewhere from a GS12 to a GS13. Okay, next slide, please. In the wonderful world of international development, we look for people who have experience. A lot of people have experience for the Peace Corps, AmeriCorps, or there are a number of different opportunities out there that will give you the experience that you need. As the last presenter said, please just look at different opportunities. Some of those opportunities can be unpaid opportunities or could be a class that you can take, which will give you more opportunity, which will enhance your experience and enhance your resume. Next slide, please. What we did is we went out and we reached out to PMFs that currently work at USAID, or alumni actually, because they've graduated from the program. And we asked them for their helpful tips so that we could try to make a difference for you. Next slide, please. This is from Taranja from our Global Development Lab. Her recommendation for you is to keep in mind that there is no mathematical formula for being selected as a PMF. When you take the test, relax and respond as truthfully as possible. Find a quiet place with reliable internet where you can focus without being disturbed. Other recommendation is be sure to review OPM assessment preparation guide well before you take the assessment so that you understand what traits they're looking for, as well as the assessment's basic structure and timing. And the third one is take time to refresh and review your resume with a mentor or a colleague. So once again, in her message, she is telling everyone the same thing that you heard before. Please don't wait till the last minute. Go ahead and complete your application as soon as possible. But relax and respond as truthfully as possible. As she said, there's no trick to this. But you will need the time to focus on it and get it done. Okay? Next page. Now this is from Allison. She's a former PMF, and she is in our Office of Policy Planning and Learning. And her recommendations were to strengthen your resume. Make sure your resume highlights accomplishments, not only tasks or roles, and quantifies wherever possible. And then the second tip is to use your stronger resume to tailor your interview prep. Use your interviews to help tailor and translate your resume for each position you are applying to. I am a big proponent for writing a resume for each position that you apply for. And in doing that, it's not asking you to do a lot, but it's asking you to read the job announcement, to look at what they are looking for, and to make sure those are the points about your background that you highlight on your resume, instead of making sure everything else is in the forefront. So we're asking you still to be truthful on your resume, but make sure you highlight the things or experience that you have that matches what we're asking for in the job announcement. And also when you're writing your when you're writing your resume, make sure your resume highlights your accomplishments. A lot of times you write your resume in terms of by using your accomplishments. Okay, next slide, please. And we have from Walida, who is in our Africa Bureau. My suggestion is to be open-minded and do not limit yourself to work you feel like you want to do. Try to get your foot in the door first and then seek out opportunities that fall in line with your dream job. And then I also feel that as an applicant, you should do due diligence to learn about the mission of the agency or organization you're applying to ensure it aligns with your personal mission. So her advice is a little bit different. It's get in the door, and once you're in the door, you can manage your career. So that's one way to look at it. I do like the fact that she recommends that you be open-minded. Once again, that also goes back to when I was telling you that when you see a position title, do not judge the job by the title. Read the position description. Next slide. This is from Jesse, who's with our Bureau for Latin America and the Caribbean. He's also an alumnus. He said, be prepared to explain why you're interested in public service. That is very important. Be flexible when choosing an agency. Prepare for interviews. Draft your answers for common interview questions in advance and bounce them off of mentors, friends, professors, etc. Remember your interviewer's names and send a follow-up. So that is Jesse's advice. And I do like the fact he stated that you really should know why you are interested in public service and be able to articulate that a response about that question in an interview. Next slide. Our final thoughts are to never doubt yourself. You are all capable of amazing things, which is something that we truly believe in. Go confidently in the direction of your dreams. Live the life you've imagined. This is the best time of your life. There are wonderful opportunities out there for you, such as a PMF program. If it doesn't work out for you this year, as long as you're within that 2-year window, you can apply again another year until you get the job of your dreams. And if the dream is being a PMF, please don't give up. Just take your time, don't wait till the last minute, and get it done. And that is our presentation. Any questions, or that's at the end? Okay.
Yeah, I think we
Thank
can
you.
take questions now. We did have a question in the chat. Can you speak a little bit more about the assessment, and is it similar to the FSOT? So did you guys hear that?
This is Aquania. I heard it, but I'm not sure if I can actually answer that question.
Okay.
Because I've taken the FSOT assessment. I've never taken the PMF one. But I would say in general, a lot of these assessments are trying to gather more information about you and how you operate under pressure, and as well as highlighting your best qualities. And so I think beside from being prepared and knowing your resume well and stories to tell that actually shows you're qualified, I recommend a great night's sleep beforehand and try to, so I say this with caution because some people go down the Google tunnels and they link up with groups and do, practice situations. And I'm not against gathering information on Google and even being a part of groups that are preparing for assessments, but I do want to caution you that not everything discussed in those groups or those forums is true, nor should it be taken as the gospel of how to pass something, because in some cases, a lot of the people who are sharing that information have not successfully passed the assessment at all. So, take it all with a grain of salt. I think it's helpful to have accountability partners. And if there are other people around you also preparing for the assessment, by all means, make friends. But just be careful in how much of that information you process as fact, and really read the public information that's provided from the organization when you're preparing for assessments.
Well, we've found that also that a lot of people will share their opinion, and a lot of people think that their opinions are factual, but it is just their opinion. So I totally agree with your recommendation. Just remember that a lot of those people may not have even taken the test, may not have passed the test, and it's their opinion.
Got it. Thank you. Theo, I think I saw your hand up.
Yes. I don't know if I can start my video or not, but yeah, it's a two-part question about the. Okay. Just want to thank you, ladies, for your presentation. It's a two-part question about about your resume. Would you say it's better to keep the initial resume more general? And do you think there is a time, can you be too lengthy in your descriptions on some of your jobs? And then the second question is, since you're able to tailor it later on, is it better just to kind of tailor it and maybe shorten it later on once you are a finalist?
Do you want to give your, well, I prefer, what we prefer at USAID is for you to tailor your resume now, because your resume is also a writing sample. So I'm not telling you to leave things off. I'm telling you to be very succinct in how you write things and how you capture your experience. So if someone who sends in a 10-page resume, in theory, most recent grads don't have that much experience that you should have a 10-page resume. If you do have experience that needs to take up more than 2 or 3 pages, please make sure it's written very well.
Okay, great. Thank you. So you would say 2 to 3 is a good length, 2 to 3 pages is a good length, or
Yes.
shorter, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I have another question in the chat. At what point in the 1-year cycle do the State Department and USAID typically post PMF positions? I've also heard that all State Department PMF positions are at the GS9 level. How quickly can fellows move up to higher GS levels during or after their PMF assignment?
Okay. Well, we typically post or announce our positions after we get the list of finalists. We get the list of finalists and we solicit from our hiring managers the jobs that they would like to fill. So we typically post our jobs probably within 30 days after we get a finalist list, if not before.
Okay, great. And do you have others that are posted after that initial period, or is that the best time to apply?
That is the best time to apply. Most of our managers send everything in at one time. And I don't know if OPM is going to have this again, but OPM normally has a PMF job fair in which all the federal agencies are able to meet the PMFs. It used to be in person. I guess now if they have it, it'll be a virtual job fair. So it's advantageous for all the hiring managers to present all the opportunities at one time, right after the list of finalists are announced and right before the job fair. And then afterwards, of course, you may have 1 or 2 positions who are filled later.
Thank you. Aquania, did you have any insight on the State Department PMF hiring timeframe?
I am not in that space right now, so I don't want to speak on it and then misspeak. But I would definitely say when I was in that space, we everything was pretty much on the hiring cycle that they'd set out for the year based on when jobs were either in need or going to be available. So I would say it's probably very similar to USAID, especially since this is a national program. So I would expect the same timeline. But it's definitely the onus on networking and really finding opportunities is on you. And I know that's stressful for some people, especially when they say, I have no ties to the government. How could I possibly get the information or even be aware. One of my rules of thumb is, again, USA Jobs, not the friendliest, but a useful site. If you subscribe to State Department notifications so that when an opportunity at state is advertised, you will receive an email first. I think that's one way to make sure that you're at the top of the queue when things are posted, and you can really define your notifications to meet your needs so that you're not getting all the jobs across the nation, but maybe specific to topics that interest you. But I would recommend that you do that if you definitely want to hear about it first. And then you can also go on careers.state.gov, which is our website with career opportunities, and subscribe to our specific email list as well.
Great, thank you. And Akwani, I wanted to just follow up. It sounds like you feel that the federal format resume is preferred for this application. Is that your advice, the federal format rather than the SICE format?
No, I think it really depends on the person and how you're going to explain it. So I think Melanie made a really good point about being a good writer in general and being able to tell your story, because a resume is your first interaction with a lot of hiring managers. But my recommendation was to just don't forget your volunteer experience that was valuable to who you are as a person and contributes to the expertise and skills you have. A lot of people I know discount it, but there are things that you might have gained that are just as valuable in the workforce, even though you weren't necessarily paid for the job. So that's my main thing. And making sure that before any assessment, you really read over your resume and are well versed on what you've done. I know a lot of people forget, or when they're in assessments, they get nervous. But the more you practice and read your resume and even tell your story to other people, the easier it will be to perform under pressure, and those stories will come naturally to you and not seem robotic. So that's really where I want to share that guidance, because I've seen people in action, and I know the ones who prepared the most tend to succeed the best.
Got it. Thank you. So I guess you can use either format. It is fine as long as it tells your story and in the way you feel most comfortable with. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, Theo, I think you had another question.
Yes, this question is for Melanie. Can you negotiate what GS level you come in, or is it kind of just, it's already stated in your job posting?
It's already stated in your job post, and excuse me, in our job posting, the GS levels, each level will state the amount of experience you have to come in at that level. So you could only negotiate it if you have left off some experience that you have, because we're actually counting the number of years. In some cases, the number of years, like was previously stated, we can count the months. You need to put down the month you started something, the month it ended, and because that can make a huge difference as we're counting the amount of experience you have. And yes, I have sat there and counted, trying to help someone get to that next grade, or making sure we weren't sliding them. I'm counting months, I'm counting weeks, and trying to justify it to maybe find out somebody was short about a month and a half of experience. So you can go on to OPM's website, look up the GS scale. If the GS scale on OPM website is really according to job series. Job series are usually by, I guess, industry, the field that you want to go into. And it explains what a GS9 would be, the GS11 in that particular occupational field. So spend some time on that. I came from the private sector, so coming into the government, I am like, what is a GS9? You know, when you apply for everything because you just don't know unless you're part of the federal government. But to go online and look up occupational series is what you look up actually on OPM's website. It'll explain it in better detail, and it just will make you feel better about the process because you weren't educated about it.
Great, thank you. There's another question in the chat. Would you recommend filling out the USA Jobs Resume Builder or submitting your own? And secondly, how far back should your resume go? So how far back, how long should your resume be in the past?
Well, for the federal government, the instructions on USA Jobs will tell you to include all of your work history and all of your volunteer history if it is important. So you're going to go back to your first professional job. I wouldn't go back to what I did in high school when I worked at the grocery store, something like that. But I would start off with my first professional job, which might have been an internship while I was in college. Don't leave off those important internships, those important volunteer situations, experiences that you've had. That might even start your resume. But the grocery store, going back that far, no.
Okay, great. That's helpful. So anything professional, college to the present, even if you have more experience, still put it on.
Yes.
Okay. Any additional questions from students?
Excuse me.
Oh, yeah.
Also attach your other resume. You can build a resume. That builder might be a little lengthy because it wants everything, but attach your resume as well.
Okay, great. So attach an additional attachment with the other one.
Yes.
Perfect. Any other questions from students? Please feel free to raise your hand or chat them, and we'll be happy to ask our panelists. So what is the first thing, as we're waiting if any other questions, I have another question. What are the things that stand out to you when you're looking at resumes? I'm sure you probably only spend a few seconds, reviewing a resume initially. What jumps out at you? What are the things you typically notice about a resume?
Well, for me, I love resumes that are written by using the accomplishments as part of the sentences. I love resumes that are well written, without error. I love resumes that do not have like the graphics. I'm a W, like maybe a big W over on the corner, and they line things up this to the left or to the right with fancy designs. And one of the reasons why I don't like that, it's a pretty presentation, but a lot of resumes are scanned into a database. When you scan into a database, when we get it, we can't read it because it was just a little colorful and the scanners didn't take all of that. And I want substance. I want your substance. I want it quick. I want it, at the top. Because a lot of times when you have a lot of resumes to read, you really are just scanning the resumes, to be honest with you. You scan them to see what catches your eye and your interest, and then you go back to the ones that you thought that you needed to spend some more time with. If you have 100 to do or 500 to do, you have to learn how to do it quickly and then go back again and focus on the ones that really caught your eye in terms of the skills and abilities that you were looking for. So I will say this, and I'm sorry, on Friday afternoons, I'm just a little slow here. I know. Our job announcements, look at your job announcements, look at the skills and abilities that they tell you that are required. When you are a recruiter or a staffer in the government, you will have to match that resume to those skills and abilities. We have to see that you have the required skills and ability. So that's why I said you have to sometimes write your resume to bring those things out. So we're going to look at it quickly in a paragraph to see if you have that. If we don't see it, then maybe you have it, but you didn't spend time writing it out. But if we don't see it, then that will eliminate you.
Right. And the government is it's very strict like that, right? Like you cannot hire somebody if their resume doesn't state that they have those requirements. So it seems to be just a very, it's just a very strict process like that. You have to have those required elements of the resume.
You have to have those required elements. But you know, a lot of times people have them, they don't include them on their resume. They don't spell it out. They're used to applying for jobs maybe in the private sector, in which it's a whole different process. And I will tell you, I came from the private sector. When I applied for jobs at first, I kind of fought the process. I really did. It was like, okay, I'm going to do like I normally do. But then I accepted the fact that when I was applying for jobs, the job announcement called recruiting staffing. I was like, I don't want to call it staffing. Well, you know what? Call it staffing. Call it staffing, because what you're trying to do is get the interview. I'm not lying. I'm changing my word to match their word, using the right language so that I can get the interview, so I can go in and explain to people about my background, share my experience with them. So don't fight the system. And I think sometimes we have a habit of doing it. If we don't like something, we're not going to do it. But this is a system. This is what you have to get through. It's a process. Go through the process. Don't make it a negative process. It is what it is. And then once I accepted the process, it was smooth sailing. It was amazing.
That's great advice. So just speak their language and make sure if you have a word that means the same thing, change it to what they're looking for, and make sure you're demonstrating in your resume where you have that experience. And again, even if it's volunteer, you can still put it in there.
Absolutely.
That's great advice. Thank you. Any other questions from students? Oh, we have Chloe has your hand up. Go ahead, Chloe.
Hi, thank you so much, Aquania and Melanie, for the presentation. I have a question going back to the resume thing. I hope I'm not beating a dead horse, but it's about the length, and we were talking about, don't leave off professional experience that you may have dropped off if it is professional. But would you say, like, at about 2 pages, you should cut off your resume if you only have about 5 years of experience? Because that's about what I've got, and I'm trying to understand, balancing detail and not cutting things off with going on too long. And I'm also referring right now to the PMF general resume instead of like a position specific resume.
Okay, my question to you, in putting together a resume that is 2 pages in length, are you leaving off anything of substance? Are you leaving off volunteer experience? Are you cutting anything off? See, if you're cutting things off that are very important and really highlight the experience that you have, don't cut it off. But can you get that in 2 pages? Can you write succinctly about your experience? Now, don't feel bad if the answer is you need 3 pages, you need 3 pages. Because some people have a lot of volunteer experience, or they have a lot of internships, a lot of things of relevance. But you are the only person who can determine that. I mean, I would be surprised with someone with the number of years experience that you have. If you give me something like 7 pages, that's a lot. Also remember, your resume gets you in the door. If I read 7 pages of your resume, I don't need to interview you because I read everything about you. What is there for you to tell me? So instead of me inviting you in for an interview because I had additional questions, I have my answer. So my answer may be a no. It may be yes, but it may be a no because you shared everything. Your resume is supposed to get you into the door, get you into an interview.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right.
Do you disagree?
No, I think that's a great answer. It just gets a little tricky with government. I get it. You go to school, you apply to private jobs, they tell you your life should fit on a page. And then the government says, no, feel free to use more than 1 page. So I know it's scary, but honestly, I think you should be someone who's resilient if you're going to apply to a government position, not just this program, because unfortunately, sometimes you'll apply to a lot more than one position before you get a yes. And that is just human nature and the government, you know? So I definitely recommend that you prepare yourself to not get a yes the first time. Like the program, assuming you get into the program, even then when you're trying to find where you do your rotation and stuff, you're gonna have opportunities and you're gonna have to probably apply to more than one. So you will perfect the system at some point, depending on how much practice you give yourself. But definitely give yourself grace if you don't get hired the first time or you don't get in the program the first time you apply. Because I know people who applied to this program 3 times and the third time was the charm. And then I know others who apply once and they get in the first time. But then they still had to apply to several rotational opportunities before they got the right fit. So that's really, you know, after all the tips and tricks, you just need to be resilient because applying for a government job is not as simple as other opportunities.
I agree. I think that was well put. You definitely have to be resilient. And, you know, if you get a negative response, don't get down about it. It's just part of a process. Everything is very competitive. A lot of people get no's, but when you get a yes, it's also a feel-good situation. So just don't give up.
Thank you. Theo, I think you had another one.
Yeah, kind of a logistical question. Once you do finally get a yes, can you guys tell us just like timeline wise how long it takes to get in? Like I've heard stories like the background check can take, you know, 4 or 6 months. Maybe that's the reason why sometimes people drop off from the program. Can you guys kind of just describe once you say yes or once there's an agreement made between an agency and a finalist?
Well, for USAID, I must say the average time for you to get a temporary clearance is about 3 months. Now, if you have traveled a lot, if you have had a lot of volunteer experiences overseas, which we encourage, and remember I just encouraged this, that actually will increase the amount of time that it takes for your background check to clear. Our security department is going to contact everyone you list that you met overseas, or they'll contact some of the places that you went overseas, and they're going to do a background check on you in terms of your loyalty to the U.S. government. They're going to want to see, why did you go overseas? What did you do? So that in itself takes some time. So as I said, what we're trying to do first is to get you a temporary clearance so that you can join the agency while they're continuing to complete your clearance. If by chance you have been laid off from a job or ever fired for a job, and the fire word is not a bad word, especially in this economy where people have been laid off for a number of different reasons, that means that you're not going to be eligible for a temporary clearance, that our security department is going to do your entire clearance before you join us. So it would definitely be about 3 months. So we ask you to be patient. If you have another job, do not quit your job until you get your final offer letter. We'll give you time to give notice to your current employer, but it is a process that definitely has to be completed. Now, some people take longer than 3 months. You have to remember errors happen. It did happen this summer to one of my summer interns who's going to start their summer in October. The paperwork somehow and the transmittal kind of got lost in the sauce. So things like that happen. So if you haven't heard from somebody in a while, please follow up. It doesn't happen that often, but if it happens, you want to make sure that people get your paperwork back on course. So I say give it the 3 months, but you know, it may take less time or a little longer, but be patient.
It's really, it takes as long as it takes. There's but so much rushing you can do, because the last thing that a security background adjudicator wants to do is give a clearance to someone who shouldn't have it. And now that we are operating virtually in a lot of capacities, I would expect it may take slightly longer. Diplomatic security has a backlog. Fortunately, they have done a good job at hiring retirees and contractors to help facilitate the process, but there's still certain things that only direct hires can do, and they will have to prioritize candidates for the administration. So we are in an election year. So being very frank and honest, political appointees who start next year will have to go to the front of the line for a lot of agencies. And this will impact everyone who has a clearance in the renewal process or who is seeking one for the first time. So my best advice is, when you get the green light and the paperwork to initiate your clearance, you do that as soon as possible and get it submitted as soon as possible. It is a lengthy online process, fortunately now, because when I did my first clearance, it was written, and they do ask questions about last 10 residences and addresses and anyone who can validate you lived there, here, and everywhere. And as Melanie stated, when you are a global citizen, you tend to have several of those locations and addresses. So, and the Foreign Service is not exempt. We still have to go through the same process, even though it is very clear our occupation is why we were living in China or why we were living in Ethiopia. But I would say, have that information either available or spend the hours required to do it within the first couple of days that you get the link, so that the onus isn't on you. And then from that point on, I do agree with Melanie to follow up, because things do get kind of sidetracked or delayed, but you can guarantee there will be delays in processing clearances due to the fact that it's an election year.
I agree. Also, I've seen I call it the modern family syndrome. They will ask you about, you have to name your siblings. In the world we live in now, we have parents who've married and divorced, and I've had even interns who are trying to complete the paperwork stating to me, my mom and dad divorced and remarried. I don't even know all my siblings on my father's side or my mother's side, but on the background check on the application, which is electronic, they will ask you the names of all your siblings. So just be mindful that this application does take a while to complete, but please complete it as soon as possible. If you can almost stop what you're doing, get it in.
Great, thank you. If there aren't any other questions, I have one additional question. What is your recommendation for a PMF finalist? Maybe they're holding out for their preferred agency, and maybe they're getting closer to the end of their year of eligibility. Would you recommend that they take a different assignment as their initial assignment? Have people, I know it is possible to do rotations. Like, is that a way that they might be able to get their foot in the door if they did a rotational opportunity at your agency rather than an initial assignment? Just what is your recommendation for that? Do you think that's a good way to get in, eventually make their way over, let's say it's the State Department or USAID? Would that be a strategy that they could use then to get there eventually?
Yes, I would recommend that strategy. This is a competitive process. If you get an offer, unless that job is something that you really don't want to do, I probably would take the job and then look at the rotational opportunity. A lot of people do go into rotational opportunities and then they request to stay and to transfer into the other organization. So I would not turn down all my offers, but at the same time, if you're being offered something that you do not want to do, don't do it.
Yeah.
Because you have to be very happy, because you still have that, it was a 2-year period of time. And, you know, you're more successful if you're in a job that you like to do.
Great. Absolutely. Thank you. All right. Do we have any additional questions from students or anyone else that's on the call? We have a couple minutes left. Or if our panelists have any closing remarks that they'd like to give the students, or any final tips for the application or the PMF program in general.
Well, I think I've said it all. This is a very exciting time for you. Please take advantage of it. Opportunities are there for you. Don't lose out by missing a deadline. Please apply. If you don't apply, it's definitely a no. So apply, enjoy your life. There's great things in store for you. You guys are talented. You're definitely the leaders of the future. We really don't need the PMF program to say that, but it's nice to have that behind your name. So congratulations to all and good luck to all.
I just want to say good luck and agree that if you don't apply, you can't be considered. So please apply. We need more SICers, SICE-minded thinkers, diversity, and everything else that comes with the opportunities being sought by talented students like yourself. And so I strongly encourage you to apply to this opportunity and any others that interest you. But I want to emphasize that once you've applied, had someone check over the application, done your proofreading, and made sure your resume is just right, submit it and forget it. Just let yourself live and breathe, because there may be a long wait time. There may be, you know, a delay, but if you just sit and wait for this one opportunity, you might miss out on others that come your way. And I think that the continuing to apply to opportunities will improve your performance and your practice, so that when the right opportunity comes along, you'll be prepared. And I think preparation is key. But I tell people that because anyone who has considered the Foreign Service as a career knows that the entry process is quite lengthy and several steps. It may take a year before you actually even get to an interview. And so you have to have patience. And in some cases, people don't get it the first time around. And so again, be resilient, but be diligent, research the opportunities, and apply. The more you apply to opportunities, the better your odds.
Great. Thank you so much to both of our panelists, Aquania and Melanie. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing this great insight and advice with us. I also want to thank our student leaders from the Black Student Union, Theo and Bem. Thank you guys so much for putting together this event. This was a new event this year for students considering the PMF program, to provide some insight from the hiring side, which is a really great initiative. And I want to thank everybody for putting on this wonderful event. Thank you all so much.
My pleasure. Have a good
Bye-bye.
weekend, everyone.
Thank you.